Well, hello everyone. This is Jeremy Knutson here with ServiceNow. Just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this webinar was being recorded, and it's such a pleasure to sponsor and facilitate introducing the Happy Path, a series of webinar components that we'll be focusing on quite heavily over the latter part of 2020, moving into 2021 with our strategic partner, gNISH Consulting, as well as the entire gNISH team. Want to make sure that we do some good introductions. The chat window will be open for those who would like to chime in and ask particular questions. The meeting is being recorded. We'll share this out with everyone afterwards. And I want to hand this over to our esteemed host and presenter, Ms. Zeta Wilson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So we are going to go through one of our happy paths called Ideation and Product Management with Agile Delivery. So the agenda today, we'll talk just a little bit about who gNISH is. We'll go over just a couple key concepts. I want to review the task types and work types that we're going to be working with. And then I'll answer the question, what is the happy path? Then we will go do an overview of ideation and product management with Agile Delivery. And then we'll talk about the upcoming webinars. And then we can do some Q&A. So who's gNISH? We are a ServiceNow Premier Partner, and we specialize mostly in healthcare. We've been customers before, design partners for the last 7 years as a customer and then as a partner. We're considered experts in the IT business management space. We've been on the platform since the Calgary release, and we are advisory to many ServiceNow teams and partners. I have been on the platform since Calgary. I've helped to vet out and build out a lot of the base functionality in the beginning and continue to assist. I'm also bringing onto the call with me today, Jay. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ada. Hello, everybody. My name is Jay Hansen. And I joined gNISH 2 years ago after working as a customer at Greenville Health System, which is now part of Prisma Health. And I'm definitely on the customer side. I was with hospitals for 39 years and 30 years as CIO. So my interest in ServiceNow was in running IT like a business. And Eda was our consultant who came in and she and her staff brought us down the happy path, and we got a lot done in a short amount of time. And frankly, I had so much fun that I decided to join. So welcome everybody. I bring the perspective of the customer and focus on the business side of the problems that we're solving.
Thank you, Jay. So let's talk about a couple key concepts. Every once in a while throughout our documentation, you'll see the concept of business relationship manager. I just want to share how we use that term on the platform. So to us, the BRM is that strategic partner to your business unit. And so they work directly with the business, your business unit, to help them with their strategic alignment of any work that's going to come into ServiceNow. That way, you don't just have ideas come in that then end up over NIS, and then we find out later that it really wasn't something that the business unit wanted to do. So I wanted to just kind of introduce that concept and give you guys the definition from the BRM Institute. And then also just time to value, because you'll see that a couple times in here. And it's just the amount of time that it takes a customer to realize the value from their ServiceNow products. Now let's talk about task types. I know a lot of older customers have utilized Incident for all work types. We have broken down the work types into 3 categories. It's either planned work, it's a project, it's a new feature that's smaller than a project, it's an enhancement, or it's a defect. Another category, if you're doing customer service, could be case. And then if you're doing HR, those pieces. But for this particular webinar series, We're going to work with project, new features, enhancements, and defects. Unplanned work, you know, it was working yesterday just fine. It's not working today. We have some unplanned work. We use those for incidents and problems, and any defined work that's in the service catalog or request. So what is the happy path? It's really a testing term, and what it is that when you're doing testing, you always define a use case where you know the inputs, it executes without exception, and it produces an expected business outcome. The reason why you want to do that is because then you can write the test cases for the exceptions. So we've applied this principle to our solutions. So the Happy Path is a brand of prescriptive workflow solutions that are based on our years of experience and leadership in healthcare. And so we've discovered over the years of implementing IT business management that a lot of times the customers are overwhelmed at first. You've got several personas, you've got many applications that need to be implemented together so that you can actually show your time to value. There are some times when the customer wants to just put in demand or just put in idea or just put in project, or they want to do resource, but they don't want to do time cards. And so what this workflow solution does is that it gives you your baseline happy path of getting in the entire end-to-end. And so this is what it looks like. You start at the service portal. You'll come in to ideation, and it's in ideation that you will actually do your strategic alignment. So your business relationship manager is working with the business unit. You've got your, you know, sometimes you have your 3, your 5-year strategic plan. You've got objectives, goals, and those plans. You can load those into ServiceNow, and you're basically aligning ideas to what the business wants to do, either for the next fiscal year or future fiscal years. And then once that alignment happens, depending on the size, the kind of really, really high level of effort, you're going to take 2 routes. If you absolutely know that it's smaller and it's not going to be a project, then you can go ahead and create the story directly out of ideation. And we'll do that when we go down that path. Or if it's a defect, or if it's an enhancement. And as I was stating before, on planned work, all planned work must come through ideation. Doesn't matter how big, small, large, tiny, everything needs to come through. So then that way you can make sure that it gets aligned. You're checking in ideation. Do I have this business capability already? So you're doing your business architecture in ideation initially. And so once you determine that you have that business capability, then it's like, okay, do I have a business application that matches that business capability? Because if I do, I don't need to go off and buy another application. So how many times have you looked at a business capability to find out that you had like 4 applications that pretty much did the same thing? So once it comes out of ideation, like I said, it's going to either come down the path of going over to creating a story, or we're going to go into demand. And then in demand, you'll pick up a few other things. And so you're building kind of on the business case of everything along the way, so that when you get to the screening part of demand, you now have enough information to make your high level of effort. And so you'll go ahead and create your resource plans, you'll get your planned efforts, finish up everything else, then go to governance, governance approves it, then the project gets created. And then so we'll talk about project and the pain points of projects in a future slide. Then notice that there's an arrow that goes over to the helper apps. I call resource management, time, Agile Delivery, and APM helper apps, because they're really helping you along the entire journey. So in demand, you're going to do resource plans, you could do time. You could actually also start to define your stories in demand. Once you get to project, same thing, you've got your resource plans, time, your Agile Delivery, and again, your APM. When the project is complete, then you're going to either slate into a release, you'll do your change control. Special piece about change control in our happy path. It is not change management. We don't treat change as a work type. If you were only using ITSM and you didn't have other work types, then yes, you could document your change. But we have a work type. We have a project, so raise the change control for the project, right? Or you have a story, raise the change control for your story. So that's why we use change control instead of change management here in the diagram. And then once you go to CAB, everything's approved, your implementation window opens, then you're off to production. So now let's take a look back to ideation and let's talk about some of the customer pain points. You're trying to gather all of the requests from your business units around your enterprise. And they could come in through multiple locations. We got spreadsheets, SharePoint, email, back of a napkin, hallway conversations. And then the request for plan work used to go directly to IS without assessing a strategic alignment. So then that would put thousands of requests into demand, and then IS has to filter through them, and then basically still have to go back to the business to decide what they want to do. So we use ideation as that filtering mechanism so that everything gets assessed from a business perspective in ideation before it ever goes down to demand. And it also gives a place to see not only current, but future ideas and what the impact would be on different business units. So you have the ability to associate an impacted business unit to an idea that comes in. What are the business outcomes of that? Now you're transparent to the business unit. They have the ability to see the whole end-to-end picture. And as they look at the idea, there's a status. You can look at the stage and it will tell you where that idea is along its path. You know, if it's in demand, what state is it in? Did a story actually get created? What state is it in? Did it go to project? What state is it in? And so the business can now, you know, they have a dashboard where they can basically see the status of all ideas that they've submitted. And it now gives us a centralized location for strategic and goal alignments of ideas. And then you also have the chance, like I said before, to align them to your business capabilities. And then from those business capabilities, you can determine if you have those applications already. Hey, Jay, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. One of the nice advantages of using IDEA is being able to take, basically take your computer to a governance meeting and show them what's in the funnel and what's being evaluated, and get dialogue on the priority setting, because there's going to be contention for resources, and who knows better than the customer what the priorities really should be, and they really should own that part.
Okay. Anyone on the call have any pain points that you've experienced that you'd like to let us know so that when we do the drill down into ideation, we can answer that? Just give that a few seconds. Okay. Okay. Well, if you think of anything later, just chime in. Next, let's look at demand. So same similar situation with ideation, and far as finally having a centralized location for your strategic alignment and your prioritization of your demands. What's nice about demand is you can actually use the different states to kind of pick up information along the way and then restrict moving forward until you get that information. Case in point, if you're building out the business case, which part of those pieces actually start in ideation, and then they will move over to demand to finish filling out, you know, what's going to be in scope, what's not going to be in scope, any information that can be added to the demand so that when it goes to screening, the resource manager has enough information to be able to give you that high level of effort in the resource plans. So a really big pain point for a lot of customers is there hasn't really been an easy way to determine resource availability. So then your resources are extremely overallocated. So you're starting your planning in demand. You can start to plan out the resources that you would actually need for your project. And then there was really no place to focus, like where the business units could like approve all their work. So you get the dashboard in demand. And then once it goes to screening, you can have a meeting. You know, the suggestion is, you know, get everyone together. You've already got your business relationship manager assigned. You're going to get the other BRMs together, and you'll determine, are there any additional business units impacted? You kind of did a high-level analysis when you were back in ideation. Now that you're in demand, what other internal IS groups are involved so that you can go ahead and when you get to screening, assign what resource groups or assignment groups are going to be assigned to that demand. And then you'll get the estimated hours from the resource manager's perspective, and then that will give you your cost plans for your resources. And then while you're also there, you can go ahead and put in any additional non-labor. Maybe you need some hardware, software, there's travel, training. So you'll have all those pieces together. The other thing too is we actually align the portfolio and the program back in ideation, just because the alignment is there, so that you could also go into the portfolio workbench and take a look at that and do your what if scenarios if you're doing annual planning, or your baseline is already set and you have something coming into the portfolio that wasn't budgeted, and you have to determine, you know, do you have the funds to do it? If you do, okay. If you don't, what are you going to bring out of the portfolio in order to bring a new project into it? So there's a lot of pieces and steps in demand. Not all of them are used initially in the base happy path. Sometimes we'll use the assessments. A lot of times we won't, because we're really focusing on getting all the work into one place. And then there's usually always some scoring mechanism that's outside the tool that you usually have to do a deeper analysis in order to actually get it into demand. And like I said before, a lot of that assessment starts in ideation. And so what's nice about it, business outcome, again, you're still transparent. Business can see the entire picture of what is going on with the work. And then the ideas are strategically aligned before moving to the assessment. And again, back to the business capabilities and the business applications. Okay, again, I'll ask the question. Jay, you have anything to add? And then I'll ask if there are any questions from the call.
Sure.
About pain points.
Yeah, where we experienced a lot of benefit to being able to have that transparency is that you'd have these projects, you know, like all of a sudden in the middle of the year, your hospital decides to acquire another one. And of course, there wasn't anything planned for that particular project to bring them on board. This gives you the ability to have the dialogue in front of your entire governance groups and say, okay, here are all the projects in process. Here are the resources it's going to take with this new massive project that's come on board. Do we let that impact our current schedules and reallocate resources to the merger, or do we get approval from the business units and from the senior leadership for the funding to make that happen? So a lot of the discussions I had were financial. Because finally we could say, okay, there's a cost to this, and it's not just the cost of the software license. So this transparency is a really key issue. Etta?
Okay. Anyone have anything to add? Any other additional pain points you'd like to add to the conversation? Okay. So you're now in qualify. You're going to governance. They said, yes, this is a wonderful project. Let's approve it. Okay, let's move on to project. We also take not a different approach, but an additional approach in project. For us, Project is all about product development, using the project for your delivery mechanism. Because if you start to do product development and you're using your stories, you can see down here in the bottom, where you have your, your PMI process phases. And notice we have the Agile piece down here underneath executing. So what happens is you have your project task, but within the development, I want to be able to do Agile, and in this case, we're doing Scrum, so that I can define the stories for any changes that I make to my products, so that when I have an upgrade or any change, I can go back and regression test my stories. I can't regression test or have to go fish it down if it's sitting in a project task or if it's sitting in a bucket. So you put, we're going to build. It's like, well, what is that? How do you regression test? I got to go build. So we use, again, product development with project delivery. And so what it helps is that you can define your product development processes. You'll find out that you may have several applications needed with overlapping features. And so maybe you have a story for one and you create a Scrum task for its kind of children, or you can use the dependency or interdependency down in your related list to be able to relate those stories once you define them. Another pain point is, again, from the development standpoint, not having a centralized source of truth. So when you do your upgrades, you have no idea. It's like, well, what did we change? Well, a little piece of it is in request, or somebody created a category in incident or enhancement, and it's sitting over there. So that's why, back to the definition of all planned work must come through idea. So if it accidentally comes into incident and it really isn't an incident, then it needs to come out of incident to come through ideation, because you want to be able to see all the changes that you've made to your product. And then another pain point is status reports. We all know how we love doing the status reports. And back when I was a project manager, having to go into the system, find out what I did this week, take it over to PowerPoint, get it formatted, then we submit the whole deck in. Then there was this separate person who their job was to consolidate all the status reports that we put in, and then you get this pretty slide deck, and then we go through it, and then it's over with, there's no history, and it's gone. And so not having a standardized process for reporting project status is a huge pain point, because you don't know your executive team, everything's green, green, green until it's not green, right? So one of the great business outcomes of having the status report in ServiceNow is you're putting in your daily status report, your weekly status report. You can actually copy from your previous week's status report, do the updates. But the other thing is it starts to give a history. And if you look at the history, you can actually start to see trends on if the project is slipping. Because as the PM, my job once I start the project is to monitor and control. So I want to just monitor what's going on so that you can see little pockets that may be giving you problems. And then the other nice thing is that if you create your templates, so then you have standardization across all the projects, so then all the status reports are kind of standardized also. And it gives you a place to monitor your products. So instead of having to, you have your weekly status meeting, and you go through, the risk, your open issues, and then you find out the status, how are you doing on this story? How are you doing on that story? The nice thing about having this in ServiceNow, when you're in the planning console, you can literally just go up to the project workbench, change it over, go to your Agile phase, and you can see the status of the stories in the project. So then when you go to your status meeting, you're really just confirming what you've seen, or you're checking, were there any blocked stories, or are there any issues that you need to help resolve? So what I really enjoy about what has become really the project piece in ServiceNow is as a project manager, I truly get to monitor and control and the art of project management, and I'm not babysitting, checking off the boxes off the checklist. Okay, and as it also says, you get your single source of truth. Everything is in one place. Jay, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add one comment, and that is if you've got a large vendor that has their own project management methodology, some of those vendors like Epic, and I'm not sure about Cerner, but some of the others, they provide tools to do project management. I would encourage you to really think about pulling that information into ServiceNow and managing that project in ServiceNow rather than in their tool set. Because again, you want a full look at resource allocation and usage, and you're not going to have transparency into the entire enterprise if you don't get down to one project management system.
No, that's a really, really good point. Actually, we actually have 5 Happy Path solutions. One of them actually is your EHR, product and program development. And it's to get everything standardized so that when you do your upgrades, you have the ability to go back against your current product. I'll use Epic Willow as an example. Any changes that I do to that application in between the upgrades, when it's time to do the upgrades, you read the Nova notes, you get everything set, you can go back to what you have modified or enhanced over the last year or half a year, sorry about the quarterly updates, and you know what to regression test. Okay. So, project is ready to go. You go ahead and within the project, you can actually raise your change control within the project task. So go ahead, raise your change control against the project task. You may or may not be in a release. If you are, you've already kind of pre-decided what release you're going to be in. And then you are ready to go. So we're now in change control. Change is moving to production without a clear understanding of the work that was created that was needed for the change. That's probably the biggest change point. You think, well, where are you changing? Or you have changes that go into production that there is no change control against until all of a sudden there's an incident and you find out that they never did raise the change control. A lot of times there's also no release management process. Back, I won't say how long ago because that'll kind of date me, but I remember being part of the release team, and we had 4 quarterly releases, 4 big releases, about 10 different non-pod environments, but everything went and nothing went to production without going through the release management process. Over the years, it's kind of thinned out some, but the functionality that you have in ServiceNow, it's also gone through a few iterations. And so we are back closer to kind of the original release management that has really been foundational on the platform for a while. And so works really well, as close to baseline as you can get it. And you can basically slate your project into a release, raise your change control, go to CAB, get it approved, and go ahead and release to production. So now you'll have an audit trail of all changes. That way, if an incident does happen and you have to go do a problem, you have to do your root cause analysis, you at least kind of have your paper trail back into what happened with it. And so we provide the ability to create the change control directly against the work type. So for each work type, you'll actually see a field on there that lets you know this is the change for this particular work type. You've got your release management process with your schedule dates, and you have improved ability to determine the root cause of a failure. Jay?
I think you covered that one well, Etta.
Okay. Okay, so we've been approved by CAB. We are now officially in production. Let's talk about our wonderful helper apps. Some of the customer pain points. not being able to accurately determine costs, both actual and planned. Using this flow, you're going to determine your plan actuals, your plan effort and cost and demand. And then when you get over to project and you finish building out your schedule model, you may need additional resource plans or non-resources so that you just do the cost plans. Before, we would have an Excel spreadsheet. It would have the project, it would have a bunch of tabs down on the bottom. There'd be a tab for hardware, software, the labor. Then you'd have to go up to the groups, and you were manually trying to bring everything together so that you could go request your funds. And then as the time cards were processed, you would get a report, and then you'd have to manually go calculate what did we spend and how many hours, and then you'd have to add them to the spreadsheet. And with ServiceNow, you don't have to do that. So you didn't have a way to determine the resource capacity during the intake process. And then when you get over to project, so comes through intake, goes over to project. When you build out your schedule model, as you're adding in additional resource plans, your plans are adjusting the dates so that it aligns to the schedule. So now when you request your resources, it matches the work that you're getting ready to do. So in the happy path, we initially have the resources spread evenly so that the customer gets a chance to really kind of feel how the resource plans are going to work. And then over time, there may be where you just need a resource in the beginning and you don't need them in the end. Then during the project, once the schedule model is built out before you request them, you can go in and make those adjustments. Okay. So what about the business outcomes? You now have real-time visibility to the actual costs. And what we mean by real-time visibility based on when you process your time cards. A lot of times we will move the ability to process immediately to a scheduled job, because depending on if you are international, you'll get your exchange rates from finance usually once a month. Or a lot of times finance really just wants stuff once a month so they can close out the month. And so we turn that off, because what we found is when you kept it real time, if somebody made a mistake, yes, I know we have the recall functionality now, but before recall, we would have to go in and then you'd have to back out the expense line, which would then back out the expense allocation. Then you had to go mess with the time card. And so it was just easier on everything in the whole time card process to just process once a month to send over to finance. You still want the time cards weekly so that you can start to track what your actuals may be, but usually from a processing standpoint, we usually do it once a month. Then from the Agile Delivery piece, that's also in a separate webinar. That's where if you're in a project, you'll go ahead and fold that directly into your project. If you're not in a project, you can use your Agile board and just do your sprints. And that works out really nice. And at the end, for your products, you now have all projects for your products down to the story level, just in case there's like multiple products involved in the project. And you also have from a feature, defect, and enhancement, any changes to your products. And then last but not least, wonderful APM. APM helps you out throughout the entire journey. In ideation, you're going to use the business planner because you can put your goals there, your strategies. You're going to, as an idea comes in, check the business capabilities. Do I have the business capability? If I do, what business application? Then once you have that alignment, as it comes through, if it's a brand new business application, you'll go ahead and add it. And then once you get over to APM and following the common service data model, you can go ahead and continue to build APM out. So go ahead and put in what's upstream will be your business applications, your business capability to your application. What's downstream is going to be the stack that it lives on. Define your application services, production, dev, and then what's underneath that, which will come in with your ITOM visibility. Okay, Jay, anything to add to our wonderful helper apps?
No, I love APM. That's one of my favorites because being able to control the cost of the software that you're carrying is a huge component of any IS budget, and we should be looking at it all the time to see if we can slim that portfolio down. And you can't do that without a tool like APM. So again, I see it from the CIO viewpoint of having to stand in front of a board and say, yes, we're over by X amount of dollars on this project, and I'm not 100% sure why. And so visibility, again, is absolutely huge. Etta?
Okay. Okay, let's talk about our upcoming webinar series. So what we've decided to do is to take each of the applications and do a deep dive. So the initial webinar will cover ideation, and we'll also cover innovation management. I think you guys noticed that we didn't have that in. That's there as of the New York release. We'll talk about the pieces that we use from innovation management, and then how it kind of integrates in with the ideation piece. Then our next one will tackle demand. We're actually going to take a real idea, maybe not real, but bring it through. So we'll go idea and then take that same idea, move it to demand. Then the same way, we'll go ahead and show products. We'll actually set up a product, and then we'll bring that all the way through, put it into a release, do the change control. And then along the way, we'll show how the helper apps are there and why they're important every time they touch, ideation, demand, project, and the release. Okay, so any questions? Okay.
Etta, how how long does it usually take to implement a happy path?
Right now, we are at 12 weeks max. Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to bring up something on that. ServiceNow releases 2 releases a year. I know traditionally when you would do an end-to-end ITBM, IT business management end-to-end, it could take up to a year. The challenges with that is if you're taking a year to implement it, then at some place in the middle of your implementation, you're going to have to do the upgrade because we are now in -1. So you can only be 1 release behind. And so one of the things that we have kind of shortened, so if you think about this, when you go into your workshops and we sit down and as consultants, we would ask you, so what do you want? And you would reply back, so what do you have? Well, let me see what you have. So then we go in and demo all this stuff. What that does is it takes away from really defining the business process. And so we actually use story mapping to map out your business process and then map it into ServiceNow. And so that gives us truly about a 3-week head start on the implementation, so that when we come to the workshop, we've already got 3 weeks out of the way there. And then because we're coming in extremely prescriptive, because we want you to get up and running, then that takes away another 2 weeks. So we save about 5 weeks on the implementation. We can actually get you in, and then we provide 8 weeks of post-go-live support, because you've got to get the project transitioned over. Even though you did training, no doubt somebody was multitasking. And so we end up doing, extra trainings and everything. So we try to get this particular happy path in 12 weeks, because we want you to be able to use it. And so a lot of times we're done with the build in 4 weeks, and then we'll do the training, go in, and then support what we've built, and then, make a plan for, maintenance, and just continue to train, help you with your upgrades. So I know that was the long answer, Jay, but 12 weeks. Can't go any longer than 12 weeks.
Thank you.
So thank you for asking that.
Hey, Etta, great job, and thank you so much for presenting this. And from a ServiceNow perspective, I know very particularly focused on the healthcare space, but as we look at future webinar series that are coming up as well, a potential repeat of this, but also a tie-in to some of the other things I have a question on is, you know, there's medical record systems, right? So some of those components that get tied in. So when we think in the healthcare space, these aren't necessarily just healthcare specific use cases, though, are they? I guess my question is, this is pervasive across a lot of just transformational practices that occur on how you handle incoming demand and what is that happy path and are you achieving an outcome? Is that a fair statement, Etta, or would you add anything else, Etta and Jay, on top of that?
No, that's a 1000% fair statement. So here's what happened. Our first year, we did everything from insurance to brewing beer, aluminum manufacturing, lasers, you named it. And what we noticed is that we wanted to start in a vertical that we understood the business side, because there's nothing like sitting down with a customer and you're just trying to figure out, what do you do? And so we know healthcare, and not just, you know, on the provider side, the insurance, just healthcare in general. We've been in medical devices, you know, the insurance, this part, but it absolutely goes, because even before I was in healthcare, I was in retail. So this applies to retail. It applies to all verticals. This happy path step of getting in a short amount of time is for everybody. The process is exactly the same. It just so happens that for this time of the season, and we've been in healthcare for a few years, but we just happen to have landed in healthcare, and then our next vertical that will be retail. But yes, it works across, the steps are the same.
Fantastic. This is awesome. What would some next sessions maybe look like as well? Are we going to dive in? And I think some individuals who may come and look at the next sessions may want to kind of re-see this. We can always watch this series again, but you know, I think getting tactically into some of that and some of the successes that you've had are absolutely fantastic. Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
That is the plan.
Yep,
We're going to do a deep
right into
dive.
the next piece. There we go.
Yeah, there it is. So we'll start with ideation, and then it took a while to find a story mapping tool. I had tried to use the visual task boards. I mean, and it did an amazing job until your steps get really, really, really long, and then you realize I was trying to use the visual task board really for a task that, although it does a good job if your business process is short, but if your business process is long, it's not built for that. And so we recently found an amazing story mapping tool that we're in the process of working with, because we would like that integration into ServiceNow, so that when we talk about ideation, we're going to actually take a look at the map first to say, okay, here's basically as they call them, journeys. You know, all tools call them something different. See, journeys map to, I think, themes in ServiceNow, and then the steps map to the epics, and then stories. Good thing across everything, a story is a story is a story, thank goodness. And so we'll go into the business side of it first, and then we'll actually dive into the tool to say, okay, here's what it would look like in ServiceNow. So that by the time we're done with the whole path, you truly will have your happy path, and you will be happy.
Well, fantastic. Do we have any additional questions from folks for Etta and Jay? Jay, I mean, from being CIO for 30 years, right, and going through this, your experience as just a subject matter expert, obviously, from how this flow works, I think is very, very paramount. So glad to see that you're on the gNISH team. That just bolsters up the value of what not only gNISH offers, but the platform itself of ServiceNow. So thank you, Jay, and the team there at gNISH for all of this today.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to the upcoming webinars.
Fantastic. Well, we'll send out the recording afterwards, and then as well, please register for the next series. We're going to be putting those on the docket here soon, and sharing that out with everybody. And I want to thank you, Etta and team at gNISH, for your time today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And if there are any questions after that, please feel free to put them in the chat or just come off mute.